This is the Doing Scary Things podcast. I'm Katie. I'm a veteran photographer, a serial entrepreneur, an aspiring author, and a relentless optimist. I'm a slow-talking, deep thinker from the Appalachian Mountains.
I'm Anna. I'm a prodigal musician, an accidental psychotherapist, and I'm living life mostly by experiment and endless curiosity. I'm a redheaded speed talker from a Midwestern farm town.
The purpose of this podcast is to talk to people who are doing some pretty scary things in their life about what it takes for them to push past fear and keep themselves going every day.
We'll also unpack the vulnerable things we're pursuing in our own lives and hopefully offer encouragement to you wherever you are on your journey.
Man, that was brilliant. Hey everybody! Welcome back to another episode of the Doing Scary Things podcast. We're so excited to be here with you today and get to talk about some really fun stuff together.
So fun.
If you missed it, we did release our second single under the band name Jasper and Jade last week.
Yes.
It's a song called Deathbed, and we really hope you like it. But if you haven't heard it, please check it out.
There's still time.
There's still time. We're not deleting it from iTunes just yet.
Yes, that's right.
So you can buy it on iTunes. You can stream it wherever you get your music. There'll be links in the show notes. Follow us on Instagram, please. And it really also would mean a lot. I know we kind of put this at the end of every episode, but it really would mean a lot if you take the time to go write a review for the podcast on iTunes. That's one of the things that helps more than anything else with their algorithm and helps them know that people are liking what we're talking about and that they can share it with other people and it'll show up higher in search engines and all that stuff.
So more people will get to start doing their scary things.
Yes.
Which is the goal.
It is the goal. That really is. We've, it's very meta. We've talked about this a little, but this has all been kind of scary for us.
Yeah.
Even just putting ourselves out there, talking about ourselves, but also just finding the time to start a new project for both of us has been a lot. And so when I've really started thinking about, honestly, soul searching, why are we doing this? It really does all come back to, I do believe in people and I believe that they have so much potential and I see people devaluing themselves every day. And so that's what we're trying to do here, encourage people to start their thing. So if you know somebody who needs to get started, that has potential that they're not tapping into, encourage them and send them this if you think it'll help. That's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today.
This is actually great because it comes from one of our listeners.
Yay!
Which is super exciting. It's a great question that a friend of mine who's our listener, named Daniel, you know who you are. Hey, Daniel. We love you.
I don't know you, Daniel, but hi.
Well, I love you. But Katie will learn to love you.
I like you a lot.
I like you a lot as a friend. But he actually asked me this question after listening to one of our episodes. And, he was really excited about just he was really excited about our whole message about creativity. And he asked me this great question, and this was actually even before we invited listener questions, but, some of them happen organically like that too. And he just said, basically, how can I best support my friends who are using their creativity? And I thought, I need to think about this more because it's a really profound question. And the second thing I thought was, wow, this reminds me of a conversation Katie and I had a long time ago when she was first putting together the idea for her book. And so do you want to tell us how that kind of relates?
Sure. Well, honestly, I don't think I put two and two together exactly like this until we were sort of talking about his question. So in the very beginning, when I started even thinking about writing a book, I thought I was writing to people who had very artistic people in their lives, aka someone who is married to a musician. What is that life going to look like? What can they expect? How can you encourage them, etc., etc. What it turned into, as I got further into the research process, was that I realized that actually there's tons and tons and tons and tons of evidence all around us that everybody is creative. And while, yes, not everybody is an artist or in an artistic field, and we're going to talk more about that in a future episode, what I realized was that it's actually quite dangerous to talk about some people as creatives and some as not creatives. So I really loved that Daniel's question was almost already being mindful of that and saying, so how do I encourage people who are using their creativity? Because I think that's a valid statement.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, not everybody believes they're creative. And whether you believe it or not about yourself, you're probably using it to some point.
Yeah.
But people who are actively using it, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Like really living in it. And, I think for our community here, it's like the people who are using it so much that they're living on the edge a little bit.
Yeah.
They're doing something vulnerable. They're doing something that's risky in a lot of instances, maybe unorthodox. And that's part of what makes it risky and vulnerable is that they are using their creativity. Like those ideas are so blended already. But I love Daniel's question too, because, well, first of all, Daniel is an extremely creative person who is aware of his creativity and uses it all the time. And he is also just such a champion and such a supporter of his friends already. And he's so quick to encourage people already. And it was funny to me that he was the one asking the question. And he's already so good at it. And I think that's even probably the first thing I said back to him was like, well, actually, you're probably one of the best. So maybe you should tell me how to support creative people or people who are using their creativity, because he's awesome at it. So I love that. It's clearly in his heart to just be as supportive as he can. And I think a lot of people have an intention or a desire to be supportive and they just don't know how, because maybe they don't relate to that particular flavor of creativity, or maybe they are caught up in some fears on behalf of their friend or whoever it is in their life that really does need their support and encouragement. So
sure,
a lot of things came to mind when he asked me that question of just like, what are some really useful, functional ways to think about being supportive and encouraging to somebody who's using their creativity?
Yes, I love it so much. Just to go back really quick to one thing that you said, you mentioned that most people in this community are probably doing something vulnerable. And I think that's very true. And I just want to clarify that it at least feels vulnerable, and like that's another one of those indicators that it's so hard to know, right? And that's what we're trying to get rid of. We're trying to get rid of the, am I creative or am I not? Yes, you are. Am I qualified to do this or am I not? You are. You know, like you have permission. Give yourself that permission and do it. So just want to point that out. But that is one reason that I do love Daniel's question so much too. When you're doing scary things, the tiniest bit of encouragement goes so far.
Yes.
Because probably you do in some way feel a little like an outcast. You probably aren't sure if you have the license that you're supposed to have to be doing it.
Yeah. I was just thinking you may have even kept it a secret for a long time. Do you know anyone in a secret rock band?
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah.
It's scary.
It's scary. It might be scary to start. It might be scary to talk about. It might be scary to keep going 10 years later.
That's right.
So I 100% value that he is actively looking for ways to encourage people. We're all about that. I am a huge advocate of encouraging your friends. And listen, like, hear me when I say this. You do not need to be your friend's police either. Like, you don't have to be, it is not up to you to tell them if they're qualified to do something either. Like, if you're going to be their friend, you're going to support and love them through whatever they decide to do. And, so yeah, just to get warmed up a little, we'll start with that.
So be like Daniel.
Yes, Daniel. I do love Daniel. Suddenly.
See, I told you.
So much love.
I said you'd learn to love him.
Yeah, so we didn't fully hash out this topic because we wanted it to kind of be fresh, but we did kind of make our own lists of what we thought would be good ways to encourage people to use their creativity. So what was something on your list?
I don't think all of these things involve verbal encouragement. I think that's definitely really important. But along the lines of verbal encouragement, like if you just say something, say anything, acknowledge what they're doing, respond to when they talk about it, you know, expressing some interest or curiosity. Like, again, like you're saying, you don't have to be the police. You don't have to tell them all the reasons it's not going to work. You don't have to paint them a big picture of how they're going to be the next best-selling author or whatever. You don't, you can just be very basically fundamentally supportive by just acknowledging it, acknowledging their effort, you know, acknowledging their heart. I think that is really, again, like super basic, but it's something that we neglect to do or think we need to have something grand to say. And you don't. Just saying something is enough most of the time.
Yeah. And I kind of laughed when you said that because it brought up so many instances of where I felt like, I mean, guys, it's so vulnerable to put yourself out there. And so if your friend, even if they didn't say it to your face, if they shared it on social media, that probably took a lot of courage. The next time you see them, ask them about it. You know, you don't have to say like, I think this is the most brilliant idea you've ever had. Ask them about it. Just say, I noticed that you're doing this. What's that like?
Yeah.
Like, ask them a question. Just, I think that's going to mean a lot to them.
Yeah. And that's awesome verbiage too. Like it's so neutral. It's like just pure curiosity. It's not, you know, very emotionally inflammatory in either direction. It's just like, what's that like? You want to care enough to know about their experience. That's super important.
Totally. And this is a little bit of a tangent. I'll make it quick. My husband taught me this actually a really long time ago. People love talking about themselves. If you're at a party and it's super awkward and you're, you know, making small talk and you don't know what to say, ask somebody about themselves. And I guarantee you they will tell you.
Yeah.
Somebody's putting something out there, ask them about it.
Well, and I think on a deeper level too, I think part of why that is that we really thrive when we feel seen and heard.
Yeah.
And
known.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like if someone A, cares enough to ask you about it, and then B, oh my gosh, mind blown, follows through with actually being a good listener, tracking that information and being interested and curious, like you just hit a home run because people don't interact on that level very much. And that's something that I remember learning and discussing a lot in graduate school because a lot of people who need supportive therapy or supportive counseling, they've just literally never had someone actually listen to them their whole life. People will come in 1 hour, because I'm expressing genuine interest and empathy and trying to understand them, they leave feeling like, oh my gosh, this person knows me better than anyone. And it's literally been 1 hour. Like, that's so sad. But that is reported, you know, back to counselors all the time because we're trained to be good listeners. And we're so missing that. And I think just it comes full circle to people who are doing something vulnerable. Like you said, they're already putting themselves out there. Knowing that you're, even in a neutral way, seen, heard, or known is 1,000 million times better than just nothing. Than just putting something out there and getting nothing. No feedback, no acknowledgement. If you see your friend doing something, you're absolutely right. Just acknowledge it. Just say something. Ask them about it next time you see them.
Express interest with no negativity. Yeah. Just, you know, whatever you're thinking, if you're thinking this is the dumbest idea, just express interest. Ask them questions. Maybe by them answering your questions, maybe you'll realize maybe it's not as dumb as I would have assumed.
Or maybe it'll invite them to think through something they haven't thought through. Anyway.
Well, the first one I had on my list, and this is sort of the same, maybe the same thing. I'm not sure. We didn't compare lists. But I just wrote blindly encourage. And I just mean that in the best sense of those words. It probably took them a while to actually say, I'm going to pursue this. This is hard for me. Just encourage that. Encourage them to think about it. Encourage them to spend more time on it. I was telling you this earlier. I think some people would have been more encouraging to me if I had said, I want to become an astronaut, than me saying, I'm a woman in my 30s and I'm going to start writing songs again because it's something that I think will add a lot of value to my life.
Yeah.
Without even realizing it, people were just putting that judgment on me.
Yeah.
You know, I could almost just see it in their faces of like them going through all the ways it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And believe me when I say I had already thought about those things.
What? You mean there's some negativity already rolling around in your head?
It had probably been a big part of the reason it took me 30-something years to say it out loud.
Well, this may come as a surprise to you, Katie, but I think a lot of people have enough of their own negativity such that they don't need any from anyone else. Yeah. I think that's probably very true.
Yeah.
And I know you're not surprised by that at all. I'm being 100% facetious, but that's a really good point. That's probably what's been stopping me.
Yeah.
You know?
I've already thought of those things.
Right.
And you putting a voice to that, like one more voice, could totally turn me around and stop me in my tracks.
Right.
As opposed to you saying, wow, that's really interesting. Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. Like, you don't have to say, I think you're a genius and that's the best idea you've ever had.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't ask that. Yeah. I'm just trying to be vulnerable and tell you a little bit about what's going on in my life.
Totally. It's just reminding me we're wired as human beings to categorize everything as good, bad, right, or wrong.
Yeah.
And that's not necessary, like a lot of the time, especially when you don't even know really what that person is doing or why they're doing it or where they're coming from. You see them, you recognize their vulnerability, and like, we don't have to apply that good, bad, right, or wrong framework to what someone else is doing. Yeah. Like, it's not a necessary part of the conversation.
It's so true. And it's this whole thing. I definitely didn't intend for this to all be about us, but here we are. But
you're like, people love to talk about themselves.
Guys, let me just tell you.
Exhibit A, Exhibit K. No, I'm just kidding.
But no, to reference what you're talking about, those first 2 episodes, that's what I'm thinking about because and we know full well, and, you know, that's great. People are going to hop in at any moment to the podcast. They may not have heard the first 2 episodes, which is like the backstory.
Yeah.
But even to make those 2 backstories, it was so important to us because we were like, you know, we have to tell people that we've been thoughtfully thinking about this, and this is how we got to this conclusion. But even to do it in an hour and a half or 2 hours was so hard because we've been toiling over this for years.
Literally years.
So if somebody musters up the courage to tell you something they're working on, don't take that moment away from them. Like, just blindly encourage them. Just say something nice.
And, you know, I think that goes such a long way with people that if they get into a situation where they don't know what to do and they need advice, you have opened the door to be that sounding board for them by encouraging them.
Absolutely.
Who are they going to turn to when it is time to troubleshoot?
Yeah.
You know, somebody who's going to be accepting of them and not judging of them and be a helpful, problem-solving, supportive friend. So
yeah, they're never going to go back to the person who laughed at them.
No.
In the beginning.
They will be too ashamed.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So yeah, you're so right. There's nothing productive that comes from injecting negativity into it.
Yeah.
No need.
What's next on your list?
Next on my list is actually, it's a little bit of an indirect thing, but it's using your own creativity. So, you know, it's kind of more obvious, I guess, for like this specific endeavor that we're doing, having a podcast that's largely about creativity. Like, we're, you know, super encouraged when we see other people kind of taking us up on it. But that's not only true for people who are explicitly talking about creativity. You know, when you see somebody else pursuing something vulnerable and using their creativity, and that does inspire you, or that does make you sort of self-reflect, borrow some of their courage and try your thing. Yeah. And then even better, if you can then go back to them and say, you know what, you really inspired me. Like, even if, you know, they inspired you to do something small, it means a lot to us, for better or worse, when we're seen or heard or known. And that's like a very meaningful, impactful way that people feel empowered and they feel like what they're doing matters, you know?
Definitely.
Because even if they're doing something, even if, heaven forbid, they're doing something vulnerable and it's going terribly, just the fact that they had courage to do it, inspiring you to pursue your own thing
Absolutely.
using creativity is like, it's not for nothing, you know?
And it might be that failure that does inspire you.
Yeah.
If you listen to the stories of half of the millionaires in the world, the self-made millionaires, I feel like they've all failed first.
Yeah.
And
many times.
And they didn't stop, so it's like, well, if they can fail and then start over and then be okay.
Right.
And, obviously it was worth it to them at some level to keep going.
Yeah.
Like, that's super inspiring.
Yeah. Take some audacity.
Yeah. Or even just if you're looking at your friend thinking, well, he's failing, he's regrouping, but he went for it. And that's super cool. I mean, I've definitely had those moments where I'm like, and he's fine, and everything does keep going on. Like, we tend to make mountains out of molehills, right? Like, it's like everything seems like such a big deal in the moment. Zoom out, as one of our friends and listeners told us. Hey, Jess.
Hey, Jessie.
But zoom out, look at the bigger picture. In 5 years, is it going to be that huge? Whatever you're doing, if you're going in that right direction, that's a win.
Yeah, totally. And being able to see people be okay on the other side of a big failure or a small failure or a mistake,
or a success.
Yeah.
All of it's inspiring.
Oh, man. Don't even get me started on how afraid we are to actually succeed. That's a whole other episode.
Okay, write that down.
Yeah.
That's another one.
I'm writing that down.
I love it.
Giving them just room to experiment,
Yeah.
And we talk about
room to fail.
Yeah, exactly. Like open-ended, room to do an experiment.
I think that's huge, to give your friend room to fail, to let them know that you're proud of them for trying and they don't have to succeed to get your approval. Honestly, and here's another topic we could talk about, but the idea of success even is so skewed. And what even is that? So success on what level? But give them room to fail. Let them know you're cheering for them the whole way, and you're going to keep cheering for them however it turns out.
Yeah.
Think about the pressure that would take off.
I think it does circle back to non-judgment, really, like having that open-endedness where almost you're a voice in their life who's saying like, like just try it. Like, obviously, we're not encouraging people to be reckless when we say that, but it's like if they're about to try something, and they're on the fence about it or they're scared about it, just one person being like, what have you got to lose? Like, just try it and then see. Try it first and then decide.
Yeah.
That sort of external reminder that actually you do have permission. Mm-hmm. And it's not that they need your permission, but many of the negative voices that are, in our own heads and our own psyches are internalized they started on the outside, and we've adopted them. And so there's power in someone on the outside saying, hey, I see you and I see what you're doing. And you know what? You can do it. Like, you can try it. Yeah, you have every right to try it. And Terry Dosher mentioned that a couple weeks ago on her episode. She said, one of the big fears is what are people going to think? And I think that's so true. So let them know, like, I think it's awesome. Yeah, I have no expectations other than I want you to do what you're most passionate about. Yeah, exactly. Go for it. Because it's kind of like, love it or hate it, it does matter to us what people think. Yeah. And it's never going to completely not matter. Yeah. No matter how enlightened you get, I don't think that totally goes away. And I don't think it should, because we live in community. So to a very functional degree, it matters what other people think. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean you should live your life by it. Right. It doesn't mean that should make your decisions for you. But it's okay if it matters. Like, it's a double-edged sword. Like, there's a really positive side of that where other people's encouragement actually affects you. If it didn't matter what people thought, encouragement would be useless. And guess what? It's far from useless. It is like the lifeblood of doing anything vulnerable. Yes. I love it. Yeah. I'll go into my next one. Cool. I have a little bit of a personal example with it, but awesome.
I would say to encourage the things that they are naturally good at. So, for instance, like we've been talking about, maybe your friend comes to you with this off-the-wall thing that you, at first opinion, you think, wow, that's like super scary and I don't know how this is going to work out. And you're trying to think of things that you could say to encourage them. So think about what they're already good at. That'll come in handy, you know?
Yeah.
It's like that old thing of like, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. But like, think of something nice to say. You know, that sounds super elementary, but look for those things that you can bring out in them. A lot of times, you know, we have this really skewed view of ourselves, right? Yeah. And so like, I could probably say to you, yeah, I think I'm fine at this, and this. Like, this doesn't scare me. Like, you know, I'll do public speaking, whatever, like that doesn't scare me, right? But probably the things that I feel really vulnerable about, maybe I'm more afraid to share those, so I'm not sure if I'm good at them, right? Yeah. Just a little personal example, I have this amazing friend in the podcasting world. Her name is Meg Kissack, and she has a podcast called Courage Makers.
Everybody check it out.
Everybody. It's amazing. And Meg and I have somewhat frequent conversations. Every month or so, we'll get on a Skype call. And that's just been so life-giving and so encouraging to me. I've been on her podcast a couple times. And so the second time I was on, I was actually interviewing her. And this was last year. It was a long time before I even thought about doing a podcast. Like, the thought had not even entered my mind. So there wasn't the fear there of like, could I do it? Because I hadn't thought about it.
Right.
After the interview was over, we were talking about something that was very vulnerable to her. And I just so appreciated being brought into that moment and being able to experience that with her, because it was something she really needed to share and put herself out there for. And so at the end of that interview, she was sort of hesitating and kind of beating around the bush. And she said, she was like, that thing where you just assume somebody knows that they're good at something, so you don't want to tell them. And she was just being really sweet. And she said that I had asked good interview questions. And so I just say that to say that when the time did come and we started talking about doing a podcast, there wasn't a lot of fear there, because I had received this encouragement from Meg saying, you're good at this, Yeah. And I didn't need to go poll 100 people or spend hours, writing in my diary about, could I do this? Because somebody had just told me I could do it and that I was good at it. But I think that is really true, that a lot of times if we see somebody who's just amazingly pretty or really good at whatever, we just assume they know. Yeah. And it's very likely they don't know. Right. So tell them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you have nothing to lose in pointing out a strength that somebody has. And just like you're saying, I mean, that moment was basically the first twinkle in your eye that maybe someday there could be a podcast. Like, you probably didn't even think about it, like actually doing your own podcast, but it was like, it registered with you. So when you did start thinking about it, now you can look back and go, you know what? Yeah. Someone told me this way back. Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because we can't get away from our own lens, like our own view of ourselves. And so sometimes that feedback is so mind-blowing, because it's just like, you don't think about the stuff that you don't realize.
Yeah. And let me just add this in, because I'm even right now, I'm like internally cringing because it feels like I'm like bragging on myself, and I don't like that. But let me just add this in, that it doesn't even matter if that feedback is accurate. You're going to believe it. And so, you could be thinking, man, Meg, like, shut your mouth. She's the worst podcaster ever. What did you do? And that's irrelevant, because Meg spoke that into me and encouraged me. Yeah. And I followed that. Yeah. And what that honestly makes me think about is the power that parents have to speak into their children's lives. Oh, man. I get a kick out of the posts I see on Instagram, and I'm just thinking in my head, like, yeah, this must be honestly such a real battle when your kid comes to you and they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, I want to be the president and the Queen of England, and I want to be a firefighter, and I want to be a singer. Probably none of those sound like real options. Yeah. But honestly, that kid might want to be the president. I don't know. Like, you might really want to be the singer deep down.
Listen, somebody needs to be. So,
I guess what I'm trying to say is you just really don't know what's real in their heart at that point. And so explore that. Ask your child questions. If they have a natural gifting in some area, encourage that. Talk to them about what that would be like.
Yes.
Because if you tell them, even at such a young age, that they're good at something, they're going to grow up their whole lives remembering you said that.
I would also extend that to even if they just have a strong interest in something.
Yeah.
Because just like you're saying,
encourage it.
If you're, it's not like you have to lie to someone and tell them they're good at something they're not good at. But when you're basically saying to them, like, you're really into this.
Yeah.
You can do it. I think we say that all the time, like, oh, you're so good at this, and even if they're not the best in the world or the top of their industry or whatever, if someone tells you, especially when you're a child, right? Mm-hmm. Wow, you are really good at this. You can really do this.
Yeah.
That's what's
you'll believe it.
That's right. And that's what's going to cement inside of you everything you need to get good enough to do it greatly,
Yeah, and thanks for making that correction, because that's something we do really strongly believe, that you don't have to have a natural gifting to get good at something. And you could have it.
Yeah.
But if your child, I'm just going to give this personal example because this made me laugh so hard. I have this amazing friend. Her name is Melissa. She has been kind of following along with the podcast, and she's got just the best sense of humor. So she sends me a video of her son, and she says his dream is to be on the swim team. It's a video of him trying to dive. It's a 10-minute video. At the end, he very dramatically just falls in the pool. It was funny. It's like, he's terrible at this, but he wants to be on the swim team. And I said, tell him I believe in him.
That's right.
And she said, I will. And guess what? This week, he made the swim team.
Because you know what you have to do to be on the swim team? Get in the pool.
Oh, cheesy.
And you know what? He did it, even if he had to fall on his face and belly flop into it.
I love it.
He got in the pool.
Couldn't have been a better analogy, but
yeah,
guys.
No, that's a literal fact. You have to get in the pool. It's not an analogy. I'm just kidding.
You're so right. But seriously, in all seriousness, it is okay if you are not good the day you start. And what it is going to take is a lot of hard work and a lot of diligence. And a lot of these things I feel like we're echoing. We did talk about on the Wilkes episode. If you haven't heard that, go back and listen. Because he kind of talks to that stereotype of like, well, not everybody should be musicians. Mm-hmm. But if it's all you can think about, if you're losing sleep over it, do it. Work super hard. The next thing on my list is encourage them to work hard at it. Yeah. And again, not in a negative way, not in a condescending way.
Like, it's worth it.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
I believe in you. You can do it. What are you doing to get better at it?
Yeah.
And I also put on here, ask them how you can keep them accountable. Would that help? Would it help if I checked in with you every week and asked if you were practicing or working on this skill? And again, ask them instead of telling them, and let them tell you what they'd be comfortable with and what would help them the most.
Yeah.
But I think that could be really powerful as well.
And speaking of ask them, I have a question for you.
Okay. Off the cuff.
Are we gurus?
What?
Just answer the question.
I have no idea what that means.
Like, are we experts? Are we sages about this?
I would never say that.
Exactly. So I was hoping that's what you'd say.
God.
Yes,
Anna. We are experts.
In fact, I am a guru.
I'm writing that in my book.
Well,
I'm a guru of creativity.
Well, the reason that I weirdly asked you that was our community here is full of people who are using their creativity, hopefully, or maybe starting to, or maybe thinking about starting to. And I want to know from everybody who's part of this community, like, what encourages them? I think we can all answer Daniel's question.
Yes, I would love that. Let's start that conversation on Instagram.
Yeah.
Or if you're not on Instagram, send us an email, doingscarythingspod@gmail.com. But
and you know what? Even if we were gurus, other people have good perspectives to add. So
this is a really really weird turn we just took there. Wasn't expecting it, but
I know.
But no, yeah, like let's start that conversation. You said something specifically about if they're not the best or they may not be the best yet or something. And I just wanted to point out the best in any category is one person. And you don't have to be the best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that would be great. And it's something to aspire to. But there are many, 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 many people doing each category of thing that we might be talking about. And there can only be one best. So don't let it discourage you if you don't think you're ever going to be the best or if you don't think you are the best.
Yeah.
Who said that that was the goal?
Right.
Like, let's just start doing it. Let's start doing the things that are most important to us and just see what happens.
And I suspect that a lot of those things that we're very compelled to do, if we really search ourselves, we'll find that the main reason we're wanting to do them is not so that we can be the best. Like, you know, like there's so much more fulfillment outside of being the best to be had if we don't put that as like our leading goal.
That should not be a goal.
Yeah.
Mark it off the list. Love it. Okay, so 2 things left. I really, 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 really strongly believe in this. This is not an original idea, but it is something that I hope everyone will start doing more of. And that is tell them you believe in them.
Yes.
Just tell them you believe in them. If that's the only nice thing you can think to say, just say, I believe in you.
Right.
And then what was the second thing you added?
And then actually do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Believe in them.
Believe in them.
Tell them you believe in them and then do it.
People are capable of so much.
Yes.
Can we please leave that in?
Maybe. It might be a blooper.
We'll see.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you, Daniel, for the amazing question. Yes. I got so much out of just thinking about this.
We both love you now.
We both love you, and our relationship has grown. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Let us know if any of this resonated with you or if you have other ideas to add of how people could encourage you.
Yeah. We would love to know, for real.
Absolutely.
We'd also have more great questions. So
yes,
just be like Daniel in every way.
Send them our way. Yeah. doingscarythingspod@gmail.com, or we are Doing Scary Things on Instagram.
That's right. And we'll have lots of goodies from this episode for you in the show notes.
Yes. Talk to you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
I feel vulnerable. Vulnerable.
Voldemort.